Trying street food abroad. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Story-Driven English. Imagine this. You're in a brand new country. The air is buzzing with a language you barely understand. Vibrant colors are everywhere, and the most incredible smells are pulling you in a million different directions. Exciting, right? But then you see it. That little food stall on the corner, steam rising, locals laughing, food that looks interesting. Your stomach rumbles, but your brain screams, "Is it safe? What is that?" Well, today we're diving headfirst into that delicious dilemma. We're going on an adventure with a character named Alex who's about to discover that sometimes the most amazing experiences and the best stories come from taking a chance on street food. If you love travel, food, and of course learning English in a fun and engaging way, you are in the right place. So, before we join Alex on his culinary quest, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our story-driven adventures. Ready? Let's go! The airplane wheels kissed the tarmac of Veridia International Airport with a satisfyingly gentle bump, a sound that signaled the true beginning of an adventure Alex had meticulously planned and replanned for what felt like an eternity. He pressed his face against the small, cool, oval window, peering down as the sprawling city of Veridia unfurled beneath him like a vast, glittering carpet. It was a mesmerizing patchwork of terracotta and brightly painted rooftops, interspersed with the lush green of hidden courtyards and parks, all threaded together by winding streets that pulsed with unseen life. In the distance, hazy mountains stood as silent, ancient sentinels. This was it. His solo journey, a deliberate leap from the comfortable predictability of his quiet hometown into the vibrant unknown. Veridia. The name itself had echoed in his mind for years, conjuring images from glossy travel magazines and captivating documentaries. It was a city famed for its ornate, centuries-old temples that whispered tales of bygone eras, its markets that exploded with a kaleidoscope of colors and a symphony of bartering voices, and the primary magnet for Alex's current, almost unbearable anticipation, its legendary, world-renowned street food. He'd devoured countless articles, his eyes tracing the words of food bloggers who waxed lyrical about the explosion of unexpected flavors, the almost religious devotion to the freshness of ingredients, the unadulterated joy of consuming something masterfully cooked right before your eyes, often for a sum that would barely cover a mediocre cup of coffee back home. He'd watched, mesmerized as TV chefs with varying degrees of theatrical bravery, sampled everything from fiery curries to crispy, fried insects, their faces a mixture of surprise and delight. But now, as he navigated the organized, cheerful chaos of Veridia's airport, a small, insistent knot of nervousness began to tighten its coils in his stomach. It was one thing to be an armchair adventurer, vicariously experiencing culinary daring through a screen. It was quite another to imagine himself, Alex, the guy who usually stuck to the usual, actually pointing at something unidentifiable and trusting it to his digestive system. What if it was too spicy? What if it was something slimy? What if he accidentally offended a vendor with his clumsy attempts at the local language? His hotel was a modest but impeccably clean establishment, a little haven of tranquility tucked away on a narrow side street that branched off a main, bustling, thoroughfare. The scent of jasmine from a nearby courtyard greeted him as he checked in. After a quick splash of water on his face and dropping his well-worn bags, which suddenly felt like the only familiar things in this new world, the irresistible pull of Veridia's streets called to him. The first thing Alex did was step back out into the embrace of the humid afternoon air, an air thick with a million untold stories. The sounds hit him first, a full-bodied orchestra of urban life. There was the incessant, almost playful tooting of scooter horns, a language all its own. The melodic calls of vendors advertising their wares, their voices rising and falling like a song. Snippets of unfamiliar music drifting from open doorways and unseen radios. And, woven through it all, the constant, happy, unintelligible chatter of people going about their day. Then came the smells, an olfactory tapestry so rich and complex it made his head spin. The sweet, pervasive perfume of incense from tiny shrines, the delicate fragrance of exotic flowers spilling from window boxes, the sharp, enticing aroma of roasting spices, the pungent hit of sizzling garlic, and an underlying, vaguely fishy but surprisingly not unpleasant scent that seemed to be the very essence of the city's coastal proximity. It was utterly intoxicating, a sensory overload that was both thrilling and just a little overwhelming. "Okay, Alex," he muttered to himself, a nervous habit, adjusting the strap of his small, essential items-only backpack. Deep breaths. "You came here for an adventure, remember? Not to hide in your hotel room. Time to find some food, time to be brave." He began to walk, almost aimlessly at first, his eyes wide like a child's in a sweet shop, desperately trying to absorb every minute. Detail. Street food stalls were, as promised, absolutely everywhere. They were an integral part of the urban landscape, as common as lampposts or mailboxes. Some were incredibly simple. A humble cart, perhaps fashioned from an old bicycle, supporting a single, large, bubbling pot that promised warmth and nourishment. Others were more elaborate, semi-permanent structures with gleaming stainless steel surfaces, tiny, brightly colored plastic stools scattered invitingly for customers, and vibrant handwritten signs showcasing their specialties in a script he couldn't decipher, often accompanied by faded, enticing photographs of the food. He saw skewers of meat, glistening with marinade, and slowly turning over charcoal embers, sending plumes of fragrant smoke into the air. He saw mountains of noodles of every conceivable shape and thickness, waiting to be plunged into boiling broth, or stir-fried with an array of fresh vegetables. He saw pyramids of strange and wonderful fruits he couldn't even begin to name. Their skins a riot of colors, spiky reds, knobbly greens, sunshine yellows, and there were pastries. So many pastries, glistening with syrup, dusted with sugar, promising sweet, sticky delight. His stomach, which had been performing nervous acrobatics, suddenly let out an embarrassingly loud rumble, a clear and undeniable signal that it was time to move beyond observation and into participation. He took another deep breath, squared his shoulders, and approached a stall that seemed to have a steady stream of local customers, always a good sign, he'd read. A friendly-looking woman, her face etched with laugh lines and framed by a brightly colored headscarf, was expertly and gracefully flipping something that looked remarkably like a thin, delicate pancake on a large, circular, well-seasoned griddle. Several locals were waiting patiently, chatting easily with her and each other, their demeanor relaxed and familiar. This looks manageable, Alex thought, his internal risk assessment meter hovering somewhere near low to medium. It's cooked. It looks like bread. Bread is good. He rehearsed the one local phrase he was fairly sure of. One, please. He stepped forward, catching the woman's eye. One, please? He managed, his voice emerging as a slightly higher-pitched squeak than he'd intended. He offered what he hoped was a friendly, non-threatening smile, and pointed vaguely at the golden disc on the griddle. The woman looked at him, her already wide smile somehow widening further, crinkling the corners of her eyes. She nodded enthusiastically, uttered something in her melodic language that sounded undeniably encouraging, and then, with a flourish, gestured to a row of small bowls containing an array of toppings. There were chopped nuts, glistening and toasted, fine shreds of fresh white coconut, a can of sweet, thick condensed milk, and a small bowl filled with a bright, almost luminous yellow sauce he couldn't identify. Instant panic. Too many choices. His mind went blank. The carefully rehearsed phrases vanished. He did what any sensible, slightly overwhelmed, decision-paralyzed tourist would do in such a situation. He smiled even more weakly, almost apologetically, and made a vague, all-encompassing circular gesture with his hand, hoping against hope that it conveyed something along the lines of "surprise me," or "give me the standard one," or perhaps even "please help this clueless foreigner." She let out a delightful chuckle, a warm, genuine sound that instantly put him at ease. She seemed to understand his predicament perfectly. With swift, practiced, almost balletic movements, she spread a fresh ladleful of batter onto the hot griddle, let it cook until it was perfectly golden and slightly blistered. Then, with a flick of her wrist, sprinkled it generously with a little bit of almost everything, before folding it neatly into a triangle and handing it to him on a small, unpretentious paper plate. It smelled absolutely incredible, a symphony of sweet, nutty, and subtly caramelized notes that made his mouth water. He paid her, the amount so ridiculously small it almost made him want to laugh out loud. It was less than he'd pay for a candy bar back home. Finding a nearby low wall that was serving as an impromptu bench, he sat down to enjoy his very first taste of authentic Veridian street food. The pancake, or whatever its official name was, he later learned from a helpful local that it was a type of sweet roti or crepe called roti sai mai, was exquisitely crispy on the outside where it had kissed the hot griddle, yet delightfully soft and slightly chewy on the inside. It was bursting with a delightful, harmonious combination of sweet and subtly savory flavors. The mysterious yellow sauce he discovered with his first bite turned out to be a delicate sweet egg custard, adding a creamy richness. It was, in a single inadequate word, delicious. More than delicious. It was a revelation. Okay, Alex grinned, completely forgetting the smear of yellow custard that now adorned his chin. That wasn't so bad, that was absolutely amazing. A wave of relief and triumph washed over him. He'd done it. He'd faced the unknown and been rewarded. Buoyed by this initial resounding success, Alex spent the rest of the rapidly fading afternoon exploring with a newfound spring in his step. He discovered, much to his relief, that a genuine smile and a bit of polite, unambiguous pointing went an incredibly long way. Language barriers seemed to melt away in the face of shared humanity, and a mutual appreciation for good food. He tried a skewer of grilled chicken, marinated in a complex blend of spices that made his tongue tingle in a wonderfully pleasant, warming way. Not aggressively hot, but full of aromatic depth. He bought a cup of freshly squeezed juice from a vendor artfully carving a fruit that looked like a spiky red dragon's egg. The juice inside was a vibrant magenta, tart and sweet at the same time, and it was quite possibly the most refreshing thing he'd ever tasted in his life, cutting through the afternoon humidity like a cool breeze. Of course, not every single culinary experiment was an unqualified home run. He pointed at what he confidently thought was a savory, meat-filled pastry, only to bite into an unexpectedly sweet, dense bean paste filling. It wasn't bad, by any means, just surprising, and not quite what his taste buds had been anticipating. He chalked it up to experience. Later, he attempted to order a simple noodle dish from a stall piled high with fresh greens and various types of noodles. Through a series of gestures and hopeful nods, he ended up with a bowl of soup so ferociously spicy that his eyes began to water almost instantly, and a blush crept up his neck. The vendor, a kindly elderly man with twinkling eyes, watched his reaction with open amusement. Then, seeing Alex's distress, quickly offered him a glass of water and a small, sugary sweet candy to soothe his burning mouth. Alex, coughing and fanning his mouth, laughed along with him, feeling a strange and wonderful sense of camaraderie in that shared moment of mild suffering and subsequent relief. As evening began to cast its long shadows, the streets of Veridia underwent a magical transformation. Strings of lanterns flickered to life, their warm, inviting glow bathing the food stalls in a soft, ethereal light. The air, already rich with daytime aromas, grew even thicker with new and exciting smells as evening vendors set up their stations, preparing for the nighttime rush. The sounds also shifted, the daytime bustle giving way to a more relaxed, convivial hum, punctuated by laughter and the sizzle of food hitting hot woks. Alex found himself irresistibly drawn to an area that was particularly crowded, a vibrant, energetic convergence of several food carts, each offering something tantalizingly different. The energy was electric, palpable. It felt like the culinary heart of the city. His eyes scanned the offerings. One stall was ladling out fragrant, steaming bowls of noodle soup. Another was grilling whole fish, their skins charring to a delicious crisp. And then he saw it. A stall selling some kind of small, perfectly round, golden-brown fried balls. People were lining up, their faces alight with anticipation, and whatever these morsels were, they smelled absolutely heavenly, deeply savory, herby, and utterly irresistible. Right, he thought, his earlier trepidation now replaced by a growing sense of confident curiosity. No more hesitation. Let's do this. He joined the queue, shuffling forward with the eager crowd. When it was finally his turn, he confidently ordered those, pointing directly at the golden-brown spheres of deliciousness. The vendor, a young man with a perpetually mischievous grin and quick, deft hands, expertly scooped a generous portion into a simple paper cone, the aroma alone making Alex's stomach do a little flip-flop of excitement. Alex handed over his money, received his cone, and unable to wait another second, took a bite. His eyes widened in sheer surprise and delight. They were incredibly crispy on the outside, yielding to a surprisingly soft, almost fluffy interior. The filling was a delectable, perfectly seasoned mixture of what tasted like minced meat, finely chopped vegetables, and a secret blend of herbs and spices. They were utterly dangerously addictive. He devoured the entire cone in what felt like mere seconds, each bite better than the last. As he was contentedly licking the last savory crumbs from his fingers, he noticed the mischievous vendor watching him, that incorrigible grin still firmly in place. The vendor then pointed to a small, slightly worn illustrated sign propped up next to his cart. A sign Alex, in his food-focused haste, hadn't noticed before. The sign showed a clear, detailed picture of the delicious fried balls he had just consumed. And right next to it, equally clear and detailed, was a picture of a cricket. A very large, anatomically correct cricket. Alex froze mid-lick. His brain struggled to connect the dots. He looked at the sign again, focusing on the insect. He looked at the now empty, slightly greasy paper cone still clutched in his hand. He looked back at the vendor, whose grin was now threatening to split his face from ear to ear. "Crickets?" Alex managed to utter, his voice a faint, disbelieving whisper. Had he heard that right? Had he seen that right? The vendor nodded enthusiastically, his eyes sparkling with mirth. He then made a little hopping motion with his fingers, followed by an expressive crunch-crunch sound effect, and finished with a big, unequivocal thumbs up. Alex felt a strange, almost surreal mixture of dawning horror and unexpected hilarity bubble up from deep within him. He had just eaten an entire cone full of fried crickets, not one as a dare but a whole serving. And he had liked them. He had genuinely, unequivocally liked them a lot. A slightly hysterical laugh, part shock, part amusement, escaped him. The vendor, seeing Alex's reaction, laughed too, a hearty booming sound that echoed in the lively square. Several other customers, witnessing the exchange, chuckled good-naturedly. "Good, yes?" the vendor asked in heavily accented but understandable English, clearly enjoying the moment. Alex, still reeling from the revelation but also strangely exhilarated, could only nod dumbly at first. Then a slow, wide smile spread across his face. "Yes," he said, his voice gaining strength. "Surprisingly good, very surprisingly good." He walked away from that particular stall a profoundly changed man. He, Alex, the cautious eater, the man who usually ordered the same safe chicken sandwich every time he went out for lunch back home, had eaten insects. Voluntarily. And survived. More than survived. He had enjoyed it. A whole new level of culinary bravery, a level he hadn't even known existed within him, had just been triumphantly unlocked. He felt a ridiculous surge of pride. The next day, feeling like a seasoned street food explorer, Alex decided to venture further afield, to a bustling riverside market he'd read about in his guidebook. The journey there, on a crowded but efficient local bus, was an adventure in itself. The market was a vibrant, sprawling tapestry of sights, sounds, and smells, even more intense than the city center stalls. Fishermen, their skin weathered by sun and sea, were noisily hauling in nets filled with wriggling, glistening silver fish. Women in colorful sarongs sat behind pyramids of exotic fruits and vegetables, their colors so vivid they almost hurt the eyes. Dragon fruit, mangosteens, rambutans, and countless others Alex didn't recognize. The air was thick with the briny scent of fresh seafood, the earthy aroma of damp soil clinging to root vegetables, the sweet perfume of ripe mangoes, and the ever-present enticing smell of spices and something, somewhere, always grilling. He saw a stall where an elderly woman with a kind grandmotherly face and incredibly nimble fingers was expertly wrapping small, neat parcels in fresh green banana leaves, tying them with thin strips of bamboo, and then carefully placing them onto a large multi-tiered steaming rack that sat over a gently bubbling pot. Curious and drawn by her serene demeanor, he approached. She looked up, saw him observing, and her face broke into a warm, welcoming smile. She gestured for him to come closer and look. Peeking into one of the unsteamed parcels, he saw that inside the banana leaves were little cakes of pearly white sticky rice, some mixed with dark beans, others with slices of what looked like sweet banana. He bought one of each, the price again, astonishingly low. The banana leaf wrapper, slightly warmed by the steam, imparted a subtle, wonderfully earthy fragrance to the rice cakes. He found a low stone wall by the river, the water murky but alive with long-tail boats chugging past, their engines a rhythmic counterpoint to the market's hum. He carefully unwrapped his first cake. The sticky rice, known locally as cow niao, was perfectly cooked, each grain distinct yet clinging together, slightly sweet and incredibly comforting. The one with banana was like a warm, tropical hug in food form. The one with beans had a more savory, nutty character. It felt like more than just eating. It was an experience, a moment of quiet connection with the culture, with the generations of people who had prepared and eaten this simple, nourishing food. He sat there for a long time, savoring each bite, watching the life on the river unfold. A profound sense of peace and contentment settled over him, a feeling he hadn't expected to find amidst the hustle and bustle. Later that day, feeling particularly adventurous after his insect escapade, he spotted a vendor with a large glass container filled with a thick, vibrant purple liquid that looked like a smoothie. Intrigued by the unusual color, he ordered one. The vendor, a cheerful woman with a booming laugh, ladled the viscous purple concoction into a tall glass, topped it with a generous amount of crushed ice, and finished it with a delicate sprinkle of toasted sesame seeds. Alex took a tentative sip. It was surprisingly delicious, sweet but with an underlying earthy depth and remarkably filling. He pulled out his phone and, using his translation app, managed to ask the vendor what it was made of. The answer, accompanied by much pointing and miming, purple sweet potato and rich coconut milk. Another fantastic, unexpected discovery to add to his growing list. He also learned, sometimes the hard way, that the concept of spicy in Veridia was on an entirely different, almost cosmic level than spicy back home. He ordered a bowl of what appeared to be innocuous-looking noodles from a street-side cart, deceptively pale in color. One mouthful, however, sent flames shooting through his sinuses with the intensity of a dragon's breath. His eyes streamed. Instantly, his nose began to run uncontrollably, and he coughed dramatically, much to the polite, barely concealed amusement of a family sharing a nearby tiny plastic table. The mother of the family, seeing his plight, kindly offered him a slice of cucumber from her own plate, which, to his immense relief, helped to cool the raging fire in his mouth. He thanked her profusely, his face flushed, feeling both acutely embarrassed and deeply grateful for her kindness. Despite the momentary agony, once the initial shock wave of heat subsided, he found himself appreciating the intricate complexity of the flavors that lay beneath the chilly inferno. It wasn't just hot for the sake of being hot. There was a symphony of lemongrass, galangal, and other exotic spices playing in the background. His week in Veridia flew by in a dizzying, delightful whirlwind of new tastes, captivating smells, and unforgettable experiences. He tried smoky, tender grilled squid on a stick, so fresh it tasted of the ocean breeze. He sampled countless varieties of delicate steamed dumplings, each with its own unique savory filling and accompanying piquant dipping sauce. He discovered an unexpected but profound love for a tangy, incredibly spicy green papaya salad that made his taste buds sing and his forehead perspire in equal measure. He even, in a moment of ultimate culinary daring fueled by his newfound confidence and the encouragement of some fellow travelers he'd befriended, got brave enough to try a tiny, hesitant bite of durian, the notoriously pungent, spiky fruit that locals either revered as the king of fruits or avoided like the plague. His verdict on that particular adventure: interesting, definitely an experience, but perhaps an acquired taste he hadn't quite acquired yet. The vendor had roared with genuine, unrestrained laughter at the comical expression of confused disgust on Alex's face, but it was entirely good-natured, and Alex found himself laughing along too, realizing that even a failed food experiment could be a source of joy and connection. He gradually learned to navigate the unspoken rules and etiquette of Veridia's street food scene, observe carefully, and watch where the locals congregate. A long queue of residents is almost always a guarantee of quality and safety. Don't be afraid to point, smile, and use gestures. Enthusiasm is a universal language. Always have small denomination notes ready for quick and easy payment, as vendors rarely have change for large bills. He diligently practiced and slowly picked up a few more essential local phrases related to food. Delicious. Thank you very much. Not too spicy, please. Though that last one, he found, was rarely heeded to his comparatively timid palate, often resulting in dishes that still brought tears to his eyes. One warm, balmy evening, towards the very end of his transformative trip, he found himself, as if drawn by an invisible thread, back at the very first stall he'd visited, the one run by the kind, friendly woman who made the unforgettable sweet roti. She recognized him instantly as he approached, and her face broke into that same wide, welcoming smile he remembered so fondly. "Hello," she said, her English still limited but infused with genuine warmth. "You come back. You like Veridia food?" "Yes," Alex replied enthusiastically, his own smile mirroring hers. "Very, very much. Your roti, delicious." He pointed towards her gleaming griddle. "One, please, your choice. Make it special." She beamed, clearly delighted by his compliment and his trust. She set to work with an artist's focus, creating a roti masterpiece, this time adding an extra sprinkle of toasted cashews and a generous drizzle of rich chocolate sauce, an embellishment she hadn't used on his first nervous visit. As he stood there, watching her skillful hands and breathing in the sweet, familiar aroma, he reflected on the incredible journey he'd undertaken in just one short week. He had arrived in Veridia feeling a potent mixture of excitement and significant. Trepidation, unsure of what to expect, terrified of making a fool of himself. Now, as he prepared to leave, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment, a quiet pride, and a newfound, deeply rooted confidence that extended far beyond his ability to order food. He hadn't just eaten his way through Veridia. He had, in a very real sense, connected with its vibrant, beating heart. The street food, he realized, hadn't just been about sustenance, about filling an empty stomach. It had been a key, a gateway. Each humble stall, each hard-working vendor, each explosive new flavor was a story in itself, a tantalizing glimpse into the rich tapestry of lives, traditions, and history of the wonderful people of Veridia. He had been scared of the unknown, of the unfamiliar, but the unknown had turned out to be wonderful, unexpectedly welcoming, and above all, incredibly, astonishingly tasty. On his last morning in Veridia, with a few hours to spare before heading to the airport, Alex made one final, almost ceremonial street food stop. He found a small, unassuming cart tucked away in a quiet alley, tended by an elderly couple, selling freshly steamed buns. He bought two, one filled with savory, aromatic, minced pork, the other with a sweet, creamy custard. He ate them slowly, deliberately, sitting on a weathered park bench watching the city begin to stir and wake up around him. A familiar pang of sadness, the kind that always accompanies the end of a wonderful experience, tugged at him. But stronger than the sadness was a deep, abiding sense of gratitude for the experiences he'd had, the lessons he'd learned, and the kindness he'd been shown. He had come to Veridia seeking adventure, a break from the mundane. He had found it not in grand monuments or tourist traps, but in the simple, honest, vibrant world of its streets, in the most unexpected and delicious way imaginable. He knew with absolute certainty that he would never look at a simple street food stall the same way again. They weren't just places to get a quick, cheap bite. They were dynamic culinary classrooms, bustling cultural hubs, and seemingly endless sources of discovery and delight. As he finally boarded his flight home, the memories of Veridia vivid in his mind, Alex was already mentally scrolling through a list of potential destinations for his next trip. And he knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that exploring the local street food, no matter how strange or intimidating it might initially seem, would be at the very top of his list, wherever he went. The initial flutter of fear, he now understood, was an infinitesimally tiny price to pay for the subsequent explosion of joy, the precious, often unspoken connection with people, and the delicious, indelible memories that followed. He smiled. A little bit of Veridia and its surprisingly tasty crickets, now forever a cherished part of him. He even pulled out his travel journal and jotted down a new, important note to his future self. Future travel tip. Always, always say yes to the weird-looking food. It's usually the best story and often the best taste. And that was Alex's incredible expanded street food adventure in Veridia. What an amazing journey, right? From those first nervous bites of sweet roti to, bravely and enjoyably, eating crickets and discovering so much more in between. Talk about stepping out of your comfort zone and truly immersing yourself in a new place. I don't know about you, but I'm suddenly craving some mysterious, delicious street food. It ain't. Just goes to show, sometimes the best way to experience a new culture and learn a little along the way is through your taste buds. Plus, you end up with fantastic stories to tell and a whole new level of confidence. Key vocabulary, repeated throughout. Stall, street food stall. A small, often temporary shop or booth where goods, especially food, are sold. E.g., Alex approached a stall that seemed popular. Vendor, a person who sells things, especially on the street. E.g., the vendor, a young man with a mischievous grin, scooped a generous portion. Aromatic, fragrant, having a pleasant and distinctive smell. E.g., the air was thick with new and exciting aromas. The banana leaf wrapper imparted a subtle, earthy fragrance. Sizzling, the sound of food frying or cooking in hot oil. E.g., then the smells, roasting spices, sizzling garlic. Delicious, delectable, highly pleasant to the taste. E.g., it was, in a word, delicious. The filling was a delectable, perfectly seasoned mixture. Savory, salty, or spicy rather than sweet. E.g., he pointed at what he thought was a savory pastry. Spicy, flavored with or fragrant with spice. Having a strong, hot flavor. E.g., he tried to order a noodle dish and ended up with a soup that was so spicy his eyes watered. Hesitant, hesitation, trepidation. Tentative, unsure, or slow in acting or speaking. A feeling of fear or agitation about something that may happen. E.g., he had arrived feeling nervous and hesitant. His initial trepidation when faced with unknown foods. Adventurous, daring, willing to take risks or to try out new methods, ideas, or experiences. E.g., you came here for an adventure, time to find some food. His culinary daring grew with each new dish. Curious, intrigued, eager to know, or learn something, aroused the curiosity of. E.g., curious, he approached. Intrigued by the unusual color, he ordered one. Ingredients. Any of the foods or substances that are combined to make a particular dish. E.g., people raved about the explosion of flavors, the freshness of the ingredients. Authentic, of undisputed origin and not a copy. Genuine. Often used to describe food that is traditional to a region. E.g., choosing something safe-ish but still authentic. Bustling, vibrant, full of energetic and noisy activity, full of energy and life. E.g., Veridia was famed for many things, its bustling markets, a vibrant, energetic convergence of several food carts. Morsel, a small piece or amount of food, a mouthful. E.g., pointing at the golden brown morsels. Culinary, of or for cooking. E.g., a new level of culinary bravery had been unlocked. Intoxicating, exhilarating or exciting, of drink or a drug liable to cause intoxication. Here used for the overwhelming sensory experience, it was utterly intoxicating, a sensory overload. Olfactory, relating to the sense of smell, e.g., then came the smells, an olfactory tapestry so rich, convivial, of an atmosphere or event, friendly, lively, and enjoyable. E.g., the daytime bustle giving way to a more relaxed, convivial hum. Palpable, of a feeling or atmosphere, so intense as to seem almost tangible, e.g., the energy was electric, palpable. Try to use some of these words this week. Maybe describe your favorite food, a bustling place you visited, or a time you felt adventurous. So what did you think of Alex's expanded story? Did you feel like you were right there with him in Veridia? What's the most adventurous or strangest street food you've ever tried or would like to try? Let me know in the comments below. I absolutely love reading your stories and experiences. Your comments help us all learn and connect. If you enjoyed this story and want to continue learning English in this fun, engaging way, please give this video a big thumbs up. Share it with your friends who are also learning English or just love a good travel tale. And most importantly, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon so you get notified every single time we upload a new story-driven English lesson. Thanks so much for watching Story Driven English. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, keep being curious, and keep enjoying the stories. Bye for now.